Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by my guy on the East Coast, Nate Weitzer. And we are jumping into a pretty exciting game. A couple of former draft picks, Luka Doncic and Trae Young, going head-to-head in Atlanta tonight. We are going to jump into some of our best bets and a few player props to look at as well. But as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find all those listings in your area. Some pretty cool early season offers there on DraftKings for new users as well as FanDuel. So make sure you see all the opportunities for you to get some nice, easy bets in, win some money as you get started on your NBA betting career. And Nate, let's jump into that game, Hawks and Mavs for tonight.
Yeah, the Hawks are minus 2.5 at home. The total hovering around 224 points, which you're basically seeing almost every NBA game open at that. Now 225, climbing up a little bit, which is even better for our purposes. But yeah, we're seeing every game around that number because there's so many unknowns going into the season, so many new coaches, including Jason Kidd for the Mavs. The inclination, I think, would be for them to push the pace a little bit more under Kidd just because of his style as a player. And probably what he's going to try to get out of Luka Doncic. But I don't know. I mean, that could not necessarily be the case. Doncic isn't necessarily a breakaway type point guard, right? He kind of plays that slow motion half-court game. And the Hawks were an excellent transition defense team last year, especially once Nate McMillan took over. We've talked about this. They were on pace to win the East if McMillan was the coach all year. A lot to like about this team, especially with DeAndre Hunter coming back from a knee injury. Cam Reddish should be playing the whole season. And Bogdanovich get over his knee and ankle issues. They're just so deep right now, and I don't think the Mavs can match that depth, even if you have Luka over Trae in that kind of head-to-head grudge match. I think the Hawks are the way to lean here at home.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I'm definitely one of those NBA watchers who's riding the wave that was the Trae Young Hawks last playoffs. And I think the trends for why they started to do well in the playoffs really comes down to who they had in their lineup, once they got there. And then honestly, their brand of basketball really, it lends itself to the playoffs. And you've got a ton of guys that you can rotate in so that you keep people fresh. And you also have a bunch of different scoring options. Pretty much everybody on the floor can shoot other than Clint Capella, and John Collins has limited range, but he can still fire from three. And when they're going to have a lineup in today that they did not have very often last season, even when they got to the playoffs, they only had this lineup for a little bit because DeAndre Hunter got hurt pretty early on. But when you have Hunter, Capella, Bogey, Trae Young in that lineup there, and then you talk about John Collins as well, that's a lineup that's very, very scary. And I think John Collins is another guy that took a step, and a guy that last season had averaged 34 points in two matchups against the Mavs. Who are not very good at defense, as we've talked about, right? Last year, they were the sixth best offensive team in terms of rating, and they were the 22nd, I believe, or 23rd around there in defense under a really good coach in Rick Carlisle. So I don't know exactly what to expect from Jason Kidd. The only thing that keeps me, so I'm definitely liking the Hawks. That's not a question right now. I would need to see plenty from the Mavs. It's similar to me in terms of a couple games we've already seen where there's some teams with some new players that are clearly looking, to still figure it out. And then teams like the Bucks, who returned their entire starting lineup and beefed up a little bit, they had no problem coming in with a nice, smooth transition to the first game of the season. So, I don't. There's going to be some weird trends that might seem odd at the beginning of the season. Last year, we saw that happen with a couple of different teams, where, including the Mavs, where they were one team at the beginning of the year and they really finished in a different way. They were really good on defense at the beginning, protecting the rim, the early season last year, and not so much towards the rest of the season, basically. And the only thing keeping me from taking, the over in this game, to be honest, because I do think we'll see a good amount of points and lack of defense from the Mavs, is the pace at which both these teams play. The Mavs played in the bottom four in terms of pace last year. It comes down to efficient offense, as you mentioned, with guys like Luka and Tim Hardaway Jr. Being able to pull from everywhere, et cetera. Yeah, that's what their bread and butter is. So, I'm actually looking under more so than over in this game, just because I don't know what I'm going to get from the Mavs on offense. But I do think that the Hawks are going to come with some tenacity on D as well, and keep this thing a little bit lower scoring and be able to pull it off by 2 or 3 points for sure.
Yeah, and after the All-Star break, with McMillan, they were elite both on offense and defense at home. They went 17-2. They had the fifth best defensive rating in that situation. And they were even better with a little extra rest, 11-5 in that situation straight up. I like this nugget you unearthed that home favorites in their opener are 24-7 straight up in recent matchups. I mean, I think that's what we see these teams, especially after a year, or I mean, it's really 2 seasons of no fans or limited fans. We're going to see people ride the emotion of that home crowd, and if you're in a close game, that could count for everything. I think we could see more home teams continue to kind of pull back from little deficits. So live betting is an option there with the Hawks. But yeah, they're a good team in terms of defending the 3-point line, transition defense. The thing that the Mavs do well, which is, I guess, why the Mavs are 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 trips to Atlanta. Yeah. But yeah, the one thing I would look at on the Mavs side is some Luka props, just because they're going to depend on him for so much right now. He averaged 8.4 rebounds per game during the first half last season before he got worn down a little bit. And if we are looking at a low-scoring game, that's more rebounding opportunities. His prop is just 7.5 rebounds with plus odds at DraftKings. Yep. I would start there. I think you can consider the points too if you don't believe that this turns into a slugfest. Even if it does, he's going to score a high percentage of Dallas's points, and that's just 28.5 points. Again, in a grudge match between Trey and Luka, advantage Luka.
100%, and a couple bets you might consider taking as well as far as points go. Who's going to have the most points in this game? Luka, you can get at just over even money, which is nice as the favorite there. And then Trey is plus 165. I feel very good about taking that. I'd probably either put a little bit on both just to try to see if I can win some money back, maybe a little bit more on Luka, or I would just take Trey's really nice 165 odds, and assume that he's going to continue to be the focal point of that offense. And like you said, the trend at the beginning of the NBA season, since really the last 4 or 5 years, has been in the early going home favorites. Just they mop it up, right? They're I believe, as you mentioned, the home favorite since 2017. Really, 21 and 26-7 against the spread. But you've also got the Hawks, when they were home favorites last season, were 21-6 straight up when they were home favorites. And this is a nice small spread that I think you can climb over as well. And then one other prop that I would consider, as I mentioned, John Collins is a matchup problem for this team. There's really they didn't have Dwight Powell in their meetings. He's back. That would be your John Collins stopper, if you will. But I do think that, like I said, JC, if we're calling him that, has taken another step in a way that, his points, rebounds, and assists, I had them up here a second ago. I would say 25.5. If you expect double-digit boards from John Collins tonight, which I think you can, then that I feel pretty good about that as well. So that is all the time that we have for this exciting matchup. As always, when Trae Young and Luka Doncic play against each other, the conversation of their draft will come up. So a lot of storylines to look at tonight. And we will be back moving forward on this Thursday slate for you guys in the NBA. Nice small one until we see you again. Happy betting.